Hi guys, it's Carly here today with the Kraftin Kimmie Online Crop, and I have a challenge where I am showing people how to match their coloring to their paper. And just follow along. You can see how I do some zig coloring and match your own and have fun with it, and join us in the Kraftin Kimmie group. Okay guys, we're going to do a little coloring video. This is using Kraftin Kimmie stamps. Kraftin Kimmie is a Canadian company, and Kim, the owner, is fantastic. They have amazing service. The products are really good quality. So we've got clear stamps. I believe she does have some red rubber stamps in her line as well, but mostly it's clear. And then we have Krafty color inks, which are hybrid ink. So they're a mix of dye and pigment, and they are Copic friendly as well as watercolor friendly, so waterproof. We have Krafty dots, which are some awesome enamel dots. I'll just grab a few for you here to see. Got lots of different colors. Enamel dots are really hot right now. They add a pop of color, and you can quickly and easily put them on because they're adhesive. And we also have some awesome Krafty stencils. So here's a look at some of the stencils. So that's just a few of so that's the products that she offers, and a few of each in the line. And today we are going to do some some zig watercolor marker coloring. So these are the zig clean color real brush markers. And I also have some of the Jane Davenport markers in here as well. And basically these are watercolors, they're water brush pens. And you can use any medium though, following along with this technique. And you could use Tombows. You could even take your inks, your watercolor ink, and smush it on the surface and pick it up with your water brush. We're going to use a water brush today. This one is from Altenew, but you can get any water brush that you choose. There's lots of different companies out there. And we've got some Bristol clean color. We have some Bristol smooth cardstock. So Bristol is a thicker paper. It's not watercolor. You can use watercolor. It just happens to be nice and smooth, which is what I like. And you can watercolor on it. And we've got a stamp press here today, or you can use your stamp block. And what we're focusing on today, there's an online Krafty crop at the Kraftin Kimmie's Facebook friends group, and I will link that below the video. So basically there's lots of challenges and lots of inspiration today, and for my inspiration I wanted to show you how to match your images with your paper. So this is kind of how I start out, whether I'm coloring with Copics or a watercolor medium. I usually choose the image I want to color. Then I would have some paper that I would choose. So this paper here is the Snowflake collection from Crate Paper, and I am currently totally obsessed with it. So that's the back of the paper. And I know that I'm going to use this on my card. So I'm going to actually take a sketch that Kraftin Kimmie has shown us this month that we can use if we want to use a sketch. There are a million sketches out there. I find sketches kind of show you how to place your papers and give you an idea about layers, and I love using sketches whether I'm card making or scrapbooking. So I have a sketch in mind. And I have papers, and I have stamp set. and I know what medium I'm going to use. So I'm going to pull colors that are in these papers. So I know these are coordinating papers, and whether you have just random papers that you kind of pull from and coordinate, you know, some patterns, some colors that match those patterns, some neutrals. So pull out your papers, and then we're going to match some of our markers to go with this. And then we know that our card is going to be color coordinated. And these papers are all coordinated colors on the back, so we know that any of these main colors we can use any sides of these papers, and our card is going to look really great. So we're just going to kind of set these here. This is probably the main one that I would use, just because these two have all the colors in them, and so I know that anything I pull from here is going to match everything else. So we'll kind of put that right there. I have my water brush. I have just a napkin. If you don't have a water brush, you can just use a thin paintbrush and some water. I have a wipe if I want to wipe anything off. And we're going to start out with the Krafty color black ink, which is called Wicked Black. And we're going to stamp our image. So I'm only doing a few images at a time with my ink. I'm just waiting for my larger ink pad in the Wicked Black to come. And if I went ahead and did everything right now, the first part might dry out a little bit. So I'm just doing 2 or 3 at once. Ink them, lay them down, and carefully pull that up. And you can see where I missed a little bit. A stamp positioning tool is really awesome to have, and you can just use a stamp block. You don't have to have one, but if you do have one, you are going to love it. It means you can get a few impressions of that stamped image. You're going to get a really good black image. And we have all been there where we have stamped something and it hasn't stamped correctly or as nicely as we wanted. And I really, really do love this. So I'm just going to take a wipe and wipe off my stamps. I don't need my stamps to be completely clear and back to the way they were, because these are stamps that I use and they get ink on them, and that just shows that I'm using them and having fun. There's nothing that's going to come off of those now. Even though there's ink stained on them, they are totally fine. And it just means you're using your stamps. So we have our watercolor markers here, and I'm just gonna kind of pull them out a little bit. I just have them in a container. So because I know what I want my colors to be, I'm going to start by pulling out some colors that are going to match this palette. Okay, so we've pulled out all of the colors that we're using, and I usually try to get 3 different tones of the color that I want to use. So this one would be the yellow. So for this, just by kind of laying it down, I can see what exactly, because sometimes when you look at that, you're not sure which one's going to be your darker or your lighter. So this is the Jane Davenport one, Pirate's Gold. This one was yellow in the zig, and then this would be your light brown in the zig. So that's going to be our yellowy color, yellowy gold colors. For the greens, we've got pale green, and then we have Jane Davenport Seaweed, and then this is the Siren in Jane Davenport. So just by taking your markers out and really swatching them, you're going to be able to get a better idea of what colors they are and what they're going to work with. For our blues, I grabbed light blue, and then we've got blue bottle, and peacock blue. And we might even not use all of these, but because we have them out, now we don't have to dig through all of our markers every time. And if we color one thing blue and then we go on to something else and we come back, we know that the blues we used are here, and it's going to be easier to sort through them. Then for the kind of red look, we have here the pale rose, and that one is the deep red. And then we can add in these pinks here. So the beach, and this one is the sugared almond pink, and this one is the light carmine. And I'm not really sure if I like these right now. I'm thinking I do like this one. And I'm thinking this one I'm not really a fan of, to match these. And I don't think I'm going to use this one either. So we're just going to stick with these three for our pinks and reds. Beach, pale rose, and deep red. And then we have two gray colors. So we've got the pale gray and blue gray. And we can use this blue gray with our blues as well if we want. This I'll probably use for more for the snowman, and that if we need anything for shading. So we've kind of got our colors here. We can pull from these. We can go back and grab some if we need to, but that's going to make it quick and easy for coloring. Okay, so I usually try and keep my papers just handy so I can still reference them. Sometimes I will just start off by doing my neutral pieces. So I know that the snowman and the igloo, I'm going to want to keep white in the center. I'm just going to do some shading on the outside and a little bit of blending. We will start with the igloo. Now, for my brush, if you're using a water brush, you want to have your water in there, and I start off by just squeezing it lightly, and a little bit of water will drip out. And then I'm just going to dab that so that it's not a puddle of water. And I'm just very, very quickly and lightly, if I'm not sure if there's enough water on that, I'm going to dab it again. I'm just quickly going over the top. It's not doing much except very lightly blending a little bit. If I want to add a little bit more shading, I don't want to go in with my marker right now because it's going to wick in all the areas that the water was in, and I just want to control the color a little bit better. So I've just got, this is just one of the sheets where you can stamp on with the Kraftin Kimmie Crafty Color inks, and I'm just kind of using one of these blank spots. It's in a page protector, so you could do it on an acrylic block. This is kind of nice to do it on because you can wipe it off. So whether you have a little piece of laminated white cardstock or a piece of white cardstock underneath a little piece of acetate, that would work as well. All I'm using that for is to scribble on. Because it's white underneath, you're going to see your color a little bit better, and I'm just going to use this as my paint palette. So that's what I was saying. If you wanted to take your watercolor inks, you can smush them on and pick it up with the brush the same way I'm doing that here. So we're just getting a little bit of ink on the tip of that, and that is just lightly going to give us enough that we can add a little bit of shading. I don't want to add too much on here because I want it to kind of your eye to read it as primarily white anyways. This is just a little bit of shadowing. And also when this dries, it's going to be a little clearer. So then I've got that on there. I don't really want to add too much more, maybe just a little bit over on this side. And then I do want some water on my brush though, so I'm squeezing it so that I can just soften these edges. And then sometimes you need to just leave it at this point to dry. You can take a heat tool and just give it a little blast of heat. If I went over here and started coloring these trees, some of the water might be still wet here, and so the green would go into that, and I don't want that to happen. So what I usually do is just move on to another thing that I'm coloring. Otherwise I would take my heat gun, dry it before I went to the next part of the image that's right beside what you colored. So I can then go ahead, wipe this off so it doesn't get mixed up with anything else. I'm going to take my wipe. I can just squeeze this, or if you have a paintbrush, you just rinse it out, and I know that nothing's going to transfer because it's not coming off. So then I can go to this little snowman. And I'm just outlining him with the pale gray. And I don't think you need to stress about this, you just have fun with it. It is only paper. If you made a great big mistake, you just start over. Lots of times I will take a white Jelly Roll pen, and if I go to the lines, I just use it around the outside to cover up my mistake. So I'm just adding a little bit of shading here around the buttons and around his nose. And then I'm taking my water brush, very lightly blending that out. So it's just softening. And I usually try to do a lot of the same color at once. So I'm going to go ahead and color all the snowy images. You can see this is very light. There's not a lot of color there, but there is some shading. So I'm going to go ahead, color all the snowmen in, and then we'll come back and we'll do all their fun little accessories. Okay, so now we have all of our gray colored in. It doesn't look very different, but once everything's done, that's going to make a big difference on how our eye reads the image. So now we can go ahead and color in the fun parts. And if I forgot to mention, this little snowman is the Jolly Happy Snowman. This little stamp set. All right, so we're going to pull our papers in again, and we're going to just kind of decide what we would like to color. And any of these colors that we picked out are going to work for anything because they're all going to match. So let's do the top of his hat, let's do it blue. So we'll pull out the blues that we chose, and we can grab this blue gray as well. So we've got the blue gray, the light blue, the blue bottle, and the peacock blue. And again, if you're not sure which might be lighter or darker, you can always go back to your swatch area and kind of see where those are going to fit together. So what I like to do with watercolor markers is start with my lighter color, and I think we'll go for we'll make his hat a darker blue. So maybe we'll take our two darker blues are going to be our main blues. We won't worry about the gray right now. And we'll put a little bit of this light blue down, and it's a small area. So we don't have a lot of area to color. We're going to leave a little bit of white space there in the center. Then we're going to go with the blue bottle and just add a little bit. These are kind of juicy sometimes, so I'm going to take my paper towel and dab it because I don't want a whole bunch of ink getting all over my project. So I added a little bit there. I probably won't add much more of that. And then the Zig Peacock Blue, this is a little bit easier to control. And actually I think I'll go in with this one at the end. So we've just got the two colors of blue down there. I'm going to start from the center, add a little bit of water to just kind of blend out our blue, light blue, and it's going to pull in the dark blue. Now, as I pick up the blue on this, I don't want to color the whole thing one. I still want to have the different layers of blue, so I'm just going to wipe it off. Just because that blue is pretty juicy, and I want it to blend, but I don't want to blend the whole thing the same color. So basically all I'm doing is going over top of what I colored and kind of blending it out. And smoothing it out. Okay, so we've still got a little bit of light color in the center. It's darker on the edges, and then I'm going to take this darker peacock blue. I'm going to scribble it on my plastic sheet just so I can pick up a little bit of that dark blue and shade it in. You want to make sure with your water brush you don't have one that a lot of water leaks out, otherwise there's going to be water everywhere. If you did have a little puddle that kind of leaked out and left a little spot, you can just take your napkin and dab it up. The same as if you have a little bit dark, it's hard, but if you have a little bit of color that went out of the lines and you want to see if you can dab it up, I would just make sure my brush is clean, lay a little bit of water down, and it does work to lift up a lot of that darker color. So we're gonna let that dry. We can move on to his nose because that's not touching his hat, and this gray has pretty much dried now. So for his nose, it's pretty small. We're not gonna do a whole lot of blending. We've got one of the Jane Davenports. I'm just gonna make sure it's not too juicy. And it was still, even after I checked it. So I'm just adding water. I'm gonna let that soak in. I'm taking a clean spot and just pressing down. I'm not rubbing anything. This may not be salvageable just because of we're gonna let him dry. We may have to restamp him, but that's okay. I mean, we're practicing, and I'm probably not going to put this marker on the page again. So let's move to this guy here. So we will maybe do his a red color. So we're gonna grab pale rose and deep red. And if you don't have gray for your snow or your snowmen, then you can take a light blue, a really light blue, and if you only had a blue that was kind of this color, you would color on your acetate, you would water it down, so you're adding a little bit of water, so you're getting something very light, and that again would be a really nice snow color. Okay, that was off camera. We'll let that dry, but here's a look. We're not going to use him. There's this little guy. So you can see how nicely these images are going to match with our papers. And I'll be back to show you how this card came together. All right, there's their cute little cheeks. Okay, so we've got all our pieces cut in order to go with that sketch that I had showed you at the beginning, and I used a dotted Sizzix punch for this one just to do an oval around the whole scenery. And so we're going to add a little bit of cloud stenciling. This is the Krafty scenery. So there's two different scenery stencils, and even though when you first look at this you might wonder what it does, you're going to be able to add lots of grass and clouds and all these kind of circle areas and suns and moons. So this is a really good one to have. So we're going to add a few little details in here with the cloud. I'm using the bubbly blue ink. These are the Krafty Colors mini inks, and I'm just going very softly just to add a little bit of cloud detail, and then we're going to move it over a bit. So again, you can match your inks to those papers as well. So I just pulled out some ink that I knew that would match. That just gives some very subtle but pretty detail on that. We'll even add a little bit here. And you could have a little makeup applicator or a smaller brush if you wanted to actually be a little more careful. I'm fine just doing that. I'm going to add a few snowflakes from the Sparkling Snowflake stencil, and I don't want a whole row of snowflakes. I just want some randomly placed, so I'm actually just going to, you could use some washi tape or Just got some post-it notes. Actually, before we put that down, there's a couple cute little hand-drawn snowflakes in this set. And that bubbly blue again. And kind of hand stamp them in a few places. Okay, so we have some Nouveau Glimmer Moonstone paste. This is a clear paste. If you do have a water color underneath, it will turn color. It's almost an iridescent paint. So I'm just scooping a little bit out onto my palette knife. And then really just eyeballing where I want this to go. So smushing it down and then kind of pulling it like icing and lifting it straight up. And I'm just really free-handing this here, so I'm not too worried about it. And it's clear, so if you do make a little bit of mistake, you're going to see sparkle, but you're not going to notice any problems. There we go. We're going to go ahead and wash this right away so that it doesn't dry on. So we've got the springy dots. I like the blues and grays and the whites in this. So there's a look at that finished card. Oh, it turned out pretty cute. So I hope you'll head over to the Kraftin Kimmie Facebook page, which I will link below, and you can participate in the online crop, or if you decide you'd rather do one of our challenges or just check out all the inspiration, please come and join us, and we'd love to say hi.